first and foremost, as you go along, entering year 10 and 27 overall, you think that you kind of have things figured out. But as we all know, we learn and succeed and fail in every year. So that's what we've been, at least I've learned a lot about my experience here. With last year, we had a roster of 12. And a lot of that roster was kind of filled with super seniors and grad students due to COVID. With that roster of 12, 10 are no longer with our program. Due to graduation, we did have 2 transfers, but 8 graduated with their undergraduate degrees and 2 departed. So that left 2 guys, one of which was a January 2021 enrollee. So in a lot of ways, we've got 1 real returner, 1 guy who's done a half a year, and now we have 6 newcomers, 4 of which are freshmen, 2 are transfers. Of the transfers, we have a sophomore transfer and we have a graduate student transfer. So our roster is 8. Within that 8, we have 8 countries represented, which is kind of unique. We have a roster of 8, 3 coaches. Out of the 8 and the 3 coaches equaling 11, we actually have even more countries represented. We have 10 countries represented. So myself and Zach Foster, freshman, are the lone Americans, and then my assistants and the 7 other student athletes are from different countries. So it's a diverse group, that's for sure. What to look forward to, I'd say this year, I would say that the excitement of not the unknown, but of the next wave of our tennis program is here. The last group who were here, majority for 4 or 5 years, they pushed us from a ranking outside of the top 50 to well within the top 25. We've been in that 20 to 25 consistently since 2018. We have dipped into the upper teens and just couldn't quite finish there in the last few years. This next group has been passed the baton and I think are very capable of pushing us even further. Just on paper, you go by rankings, results alone, where they're coming from, their experience both domestically and internationally. It's just a higher product. Now, that means that it all comes down to them and not the coaching. Just kidding. But it really depends on how we introduce them to the program, the system, the development system, which now we've gone with a whole new philosophy. So in year 27 overall, I'm only going to go with a roster of 8 from this point forward, and we've kind of dubbed it within the coaching staff here the grade 8. And the reason for that is to make things as competitive as possible in our trainings, which then allow for a bit more tension, which is good to have on court. And I don't mean tension in terms of fighting, but tension in terms of one guy across the net is going after the same thing that you're going after on the other side, and that's a spot in the starting lineup. When you have 8 guys that are all capable of starting, you're going to have one guy push, and the idea is for one guy to push, then another guy to surge ahead and just keep building off of that. So that's number one. We're going to spend a lot more time individually with them on court with just 8 players and three coaches. We get to spread ourselves and get a good gauge as to where everyone is. We also, on match day, any one of those 8 players can play. So we took a lot of time to recruit, understand, and get to know the level of the players that we recruited. We also feel like we've got into position to where, even though we couldn't evaluate anyone last year, we spent a lot of time with these players and feel really good about who they are, where they're coming from, and where they could go. So even with their resumes already at a higher point than any other class that I've been a part of, we just feel like who they are as tennis players, athletes, and overall competitors is going to really catapult us. The last thing is that we only travel 8 players on the road. And the one thing that inevitably happens when we leave players at home during the season is that they don't get better. They're great guys. They practice, but in the end, they just remain practice players. And that's not great. And some people said, well, what do you do if you have to, you get a couple people injured? Well, then we still have 6 players. That's enough to play. If we lose 3 players, then we may have to, look for different options, but we still have to compete. So we're going to be able to develop and train and compete and really spend a lot of time together all the time. So we're not leaving anyone behind, and we're not just bringing guys here just to hit balls. So the Alabama tennis is all about competing, and all of that system of learning all began this past July during summer 2. We had 6 players here learning who we are, what we do, how we function, how we compete, how we train. And I know by the end of the last week, I know all of them needed a break, including the coaches. It was a really tough physically. I think also with the weather that we had, tough mentally to do it every single day, along with summer classes, 5 days a week. They hit some over the weekend on their own, but really, they came in wanting to do this, and we needed to show them. And also just emotionally, all of them coming to Alabama for the first time, having not been able to visit before. So we had one of our players who was a January enrollee. He knew he had been here for a semester, but he had no idea what the rest of campus even looked like, because he wasn't able to participate in much of it last spring. So really excited for where we're headed with this grade 8 and the philosophy, but really with this team. We have one senior leader in Patrick Cocavalta, who's an All-American in doubles and has been an NCAA tournament participant in the individual championships the last couple of years, and his 7 new brothers that'll be joining him, one of which, Rudy Christensen, has been here for a semester. So excited with definitely a challenging fall, but also an extremely challenging spring, and to find us finishing much higher than we have in the years past.
All right, Joey, I'm not sure you have a question after that opening, but we'll go ahead and get started.
All right.
Healthy opening.
It was great.
I answered all questions.
Yeah, pretty much. Thank you for joining us. Regarding COVID-19 protocols are an obstacle, for all coaches across all sports and college athletics, but I've heard it's even more difficult for those that have a lot of international students. How does, as far as them not being able to go home, travel restrictions, stuff like that, how do you as a head coach navigate COVID-19 protocols with having so many foreign athletes on your team?
Well, whether there's COVID or no COVID, the bottom line is, when they're here, we have to cultivate that relationship 24/7. So if they go home, we stay in communication with them. If they can't go home, we stay in communication with them. So last year, some guys couldn't go home last winter break, so I had them over to my house for holiday dinner. And I know for some of them, it's really important to get home. We had a player before coming here, he hadn't seen his family in 3 years, with other circumstances. But the bottom line is, whether there are restrictions or not, it's communicating with them and knowing that they feel as homey as possible here, and then also communicating with their parents and keeping them educated on what we're doing.
All right, Katie, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, you did kind of hit on this in your opening statement, but with the team with so many new people, almost all new, have you ever had anything like that before? And how exciting is it in a way to just kind of have a fresh slate as a team and not have a lot of, maybe bad baggage or things in the past coming in, but that it's kind of a new group that can learn and grow together?
Yeah, I've never had this many before, so it's exciting. I think because they are so diverse and they don't know each other, they do all know the language of tennis, so that's a good thing. And they all have different experiences in different parts of the world, as well as with different tennis programs, the 2 transfers. So it's it's very exciting in that respect. After last year, I think, really, quite frankly, I think a lot of the guys that had been here, they were just ready to move on, and not in a bad way, just, excited for the next chapter. And we were certainly excited for them. And I think the thing that really stood out with the last group is how close they were. I mean, really beyond my imagination of how tight and connected they were. And I hope that continues with this group. So certainly getting the extra year was not a normal thing. And at the same time, getting all these new guys, you're still going to come up against the same things, guys being organized, how well they manage their time, how clean their clothes smell, or they smell. So it's fun, and we're here for them to learn about tennis, but really it's learning much more than tennis. Like this, they're here because of tennis, but it's really not about tennis in the end.